Joining us today, we have Steve Groff from Cedar Meadow Farm in Marty Township.
Yes, sir.
Southern Lancaster County. Steve and I went to elementary, middle school, and junior high together and hadn't seen much of each other since. But when I became township manager and started getting involved with stormwater and farm issues, had the good fortune of crossing paths with Steve again with regards to regenerative agriculture and no-till and cover crop. And I think some of you will remember Jim Hershey being here to talk about that. Steve's very much a part of that as well. But today, Steve is also very involved in hemp and industrial hemp. And I thought it'd be a great time for us to hear some more about that, as it's a pretty important issue. And I think, Lancaster County has hemp land. We grew hemp at one point. We should probably grow it again. So, Steve, floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, John. It's a pleasure to be here. This is my second Rotary. I was at Lancaster at the Farm and Home Center a couple years ago. So appreciate what you're all doing. It's really gratifying to be part of a group that's trying to help humanity. So thank you for all that. So I farm 200 acres in southern Lancaster County. Nice drive up through along the river pretty much the whole way. I like taking the back way. So it was a great trip up here. Today I'm going to ask the question, is hemp in your future? You may not be aware of how much hemp has historically been involved here in our county over the years. There's a record of at least 50 hemp mills where hemp seed was ground into flour in Lancaster County pre-1900. We have hemp field townships, right? There's a reason that was named that, because they grew a lot of hemp there. That's a fact. And hemp was used for medicinal uses. It was used for fiber. That's a lot of what we're associating it with. Ropes and so forth. You probably heard of that. You probably heard it. Yeah, you can make clothing out of it. I'm going to show you how hemp clothing is made, because I was just in China in December and I saw it firsthand. But I hope each of you have a little time before you leave to go over to that table. I brought a bunch of products over there, including hemp in concrete. Yeah. Now, that's not going to be the concrete that's probably on your roads, but it's more like, for decorative concrete, for soundproofing, actually for ballistic uses in the military. And I'm involved in all that. I was just involved last Friday, actually, meeting with the concrete manufacturer. And we're doing some testing in that. So that's some of the cool things. So I'm going to go on a kind of a whirlwind talk here about hemp and all the uses of it, my experience, what I have been doing and so forth. So hang on to your seats. So this is me in one of my hemp fields taken from a drone. And I just think it's a cool picture. So I just want to show it to you. Did you know that hemp is a use as a carbon fiber in high performance race cars, like Formula One cars here? I just got this picture from yesterday. So it's very relevant. This is from the UK, where there's building race cars that actually now have hemp in it. And you're probably wondering, well, how is that possible? Well, when you go over there and look, the inner part of the plant is called hurd, H-U-R-D. And it has kind of a plastic feel to it almost. When they micronize that, the strength in that can be blended in a carbon fiber situation to actually be beneficial, lightweight and strength. So it's pretty cool to see that. So on my farm, doing a lot of research, because hemp was banned in 1937 here. It had a brief comeback in 41 and 42 because they needed rope to support the World War II effort. And then it was banned again. So we've lost 4 generations of hemp knowledge. So we've have to start over, if you will, in the context of current technology. What varieties work well in Lancaster County? We have no idea. So we are importing seeds from around the world, countries that never banned it: China, Europe, Australia. Actually, Australia did ban it, but they're coming up with some pretty good varieties here because they legalized hemp before us. Hemp was legalized in the United States in 2019. So that's just a few years ago. We couldn't grow it before then. Why couldn't we grow it? Because it was associated with marijuana. Now, you're probably asking the question, well, what is the difference? I like to use the corn analogy. You're all familiar with popcorn. You eat that when you go to the movies. You're familiar with sweet corn. We love that in the summer. And you're certainly familiar with field corn that's grown around this area for cattle. It's all corn, but used for very different uses. Dairy farmers would not plant popcorn and chop it for silage to feed your cows because the yield is like 1/3. And the quality and everything's just not good. Popcorn is made to grow popcorn. Hemp, or cannabis, the overarching name, you've heard of that name before, has these various selections over thousands of years. And it really was only about 100 years ago that a few people discovered there were some hallucinogenic effects with some of these plants. THC, you've heard of that probably. That's what makes you high in marijuana. And then, of course, you know about rope, fibers and rope and so forth. You know about medicinal qualities. You've heard of CBD. And I might add, there's more and more openness that reasonable uses of THC can be medicinally helpful. So you have all these uses. So hemp was banned. Everything of the plant was banned in 1937. I'm not going to go into all the details of why the whole plant was banned, but it was. It would be like, of course, the excuse was it's marijuana. We can't let this get out of control because it's really wrecking a lot of people's lives, which it did with indiscriminate use. But what happened in 1937 would be like if popcorn had THC in it and they banned all of corn. You follow me? That's what they did. So a certain sector that was selected they banned the whole crop. And it's very unfortunate because the hemp I'm talking about today is below the legal threshold of 0.3% THC. And I'm telling you, you could smoke a whole field of that and it's going to make you sick. So we have to get through the stigma. The problem is that famous leaf is the same. Now, it looks a little different when you grow it and everything, and you can't tell unless you test it. That becomes a problem for the police and everything you can only imagine. But we're going to have to move on from that. And that's where, part of what my job is here. Getting back to the farm. So you can see these test varieties here that I'm growing. And I want to kind of support what Jim Hershey, those of you who heard Jim was here, talking about regenerative agriculture. Good friend of mine, lives just east of here. But these are the main components of what regenerative agriculture is. Number one, we use cover crops. Cover crops simply are planted between our cash crops in a yearly season, covering the soil. You see it out there now. I was driving up this morning. The rye, the cereal rye is coming, just starting to get green. Next week, with the 60s that they're calling for, it's going to get nice and green. That's the first one to really get going in the spring. So we have those cover crops. And then we also have a no soil disturbance, or we can call it no-till, no tillage. And I'm not going to go into all these. I'm just going to list them here for you. Diversity of plant species. Now, one thing that came to mind in my drive up here, and this is where I'm a little different, and I would say Jim as well, is we don't plant just one species of cover crop. We'll plant mixes of species of cover crops. And we'll try to rotate. We don't want to plant corn every single year in the same field. And that is just nature. Nature itself, when you think of a woods, has diversity. It always does. So we're trying to mimic that when we grow food. And that leads to living roots year round. We actually achieve that by planting a cover crop. So having life in the soil keeps that biological factory pumping in the soil. And in the soil covered. Now these are all kind of related here, but there's still distinctive. But it's all centered around each farmer's context. What I do in my farm looks different than it will in California. And I could say what I do in my farm looks different to my next door neighbor because they may have more livestock or they may have another cash crop that they rely on. So that's just a little reminder of what it looks like. So what are the goals I have as a farmer? Well, my goal is to have the soil covered with living roots year round, mimicking nature. So here's a picture of a cover crop that was rolled down mechanically. I'm going to show you a video here really soon to show how this was done. That's what's brown in that picture. And then you see some hemp seedlings growing out of that. We have to have special equipment to do this, but we have that stuff. We're able to do that. I love this picture because this is what I don't want to ever see my soil. That's the goal. Now, if you come to my farm today, yes, there's some places you will. But the ideal is never to see your soil. Soil is meant to be covered. So how does it look later on? Well, we have this nice cover crop that starts growing. these cover crops provide some cover to the soil, of course, but there's some covers in there like peas and hairy vetches, things like that, that actually pull nitrogen out of the air. We're breathing nitrogen today, whether you see it or don't know that or not, that we are. But these plants take it in and put it into the soil. That helps grow my corn. And so after it gets about 3 or 4 feet tall, we go in, and this is a mechanical way to put it down on the ground so we can set ourselves up for cash crop. This is a roller a cover crop roller that we have used. I got the idea from the Brazilians. They got the idea from Paraguay. That's where this started in the early 80s. I was the first one to do it in the United States. So I still have that same roller that I built in 1996 today. I still use it. We actually use it for our neighbors more than ourselves because it's nice to have in the neighborhood, and rather than buy one, we just do it for them. So that shows you a little bit of that. How do you plant through that? How do you plant through, thick cover crop? Well, you got to have specialty planters. This isn't the planter that my grandpa would have used. And I'm not, again, I know this isn't a farmer meeting here, but just to show you a nice slow motion video here, we're actually putting little hemp seeds, which you can go over there. I got some over there for you to look at, putting them into the soil so that literally a couple weeks later, this is that same field. This is what it looks like. So we've rolled down the cover crop. We've gone through and planted it with a special no-till planter. And that's how it looks like. This is the ideal. This is what we want to see. So we're helping to suppress the weeds because we have the soil covered, right? And then later on, grows up nice. And it's just a wonderful thing when you see hemp at this stage. It grows very quickly, sometimes 2 inches a day, like corn does, when it's like knee-high to shoulder-high, it can just explode. Hemp's kind of the same way in that. And it grows a little longer, and you can look in there and you can see the stalks. This is the value of industrial hemp, those stalks. And as you go through the year, depending on the end use is when you depend to harvest it. Just like corn, the dairy farmers are cutting silage when the corn starts to turn brown. When it's half brown and green, that's when they cut silage. But if they want it for grain, they wait a month and let it dry down, and then you go in. You see that all around here. Just like hemp, depends what the end use is when it's going to be harvested. Well, the leaders in the world for hemp is the Chinese. It's thought that that's where it was first cultivated thousands of years ago, and they never banned it. So it was never a hiccup for them. And I have some connections to China because I'm growing hemp, and they have the infrastructure all set up because it's been doing it forever. And I'll give you an analogy. In spite of all these good things you're kind of hearing me start to say here, that there's very much interest in growing hemp, but we don't have the infrastructure built yet to do wide-scale commercial making clothing and all this kind of stuff I'm telling you about. I wanted to see that. But the analogy I have for right now, I'm going to say Pennsylvania, is the cars are built, but there's no roads to drive them on. That's pretty much where the hemp industry is right now. So I'm in the thick of it. I was just telling my friend Dave here that we're talking to investors, and it's really tough to get money when you have to tell them that there's probably 5 years until they get a return. And so we're struggling in that area. But the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture is solidly behind this. Matter of fact, later this afternoon, I've scheduled a talk with the Deputy Secretary of Agriculture, strategizing some of the ways we see. We think right now, as of today, that putting hemp in concrete may be the quickest commercial viability that we have. And so we'll see where it goes. It won't be textiles. As you're going to see in China, it's a little hard to compete against $4 an hour labor. Anyway, I went to China, and I just wanted to show you, I drove 1,250 miles, 3 airplane flights in China, and I superimposed China over the U.S. so you can see where my travels were. And this was the first week of December. Very busy 6 days. Going constantly. And it was very interesting. Now, the company I've been working with might be the largest hemp textile industry in the world. Now, I took a picture of this on their wall. That's the people that they are their customers. If you're close enough, you'll recognize some of the names, like Nike. And almost everybody's there interested in hemp. And in some form or fashion, used hemp. Now, they supply about 50% of their production to the United States, the other 50% to other countries in the world. So there's some names you probably won't recognize. But for me to get there, to get out in the fields, and of course it was December, so it was actually they had snow on the ground at this location here. This is the gentleman here that I've been talking to from the United States about seed production. Remember I said about China has the good seeds? That's because they know what they're doing in this. The United States will catch up quickly, but we're not there yet. But to be there now, he's trying to sell me seeds, which is great. I was just communicating with his secretary late last night. You know, he got the time change. It's crazy. It's like either real early in the morning or late in the night. But anyway, because I just got someone who wanted a couple containers of seed, and I think I can maybe help them out. But what's fascinating about China is, and you're going to see this in a second, they are ahead of us on certain things and decades behind us in others. This is laying seed out on a cement slab, and every morning you go through with a rake and stir it around to finish drying it out. You know, because sometimes when you harvest it, it's not quite dry yet, with the sun. And I said, well, what do you do if it rains? You go, well, it doesn't rain here this time of year. Okay, you can tell I wasn't from the area, but anyway, interesting to know. So that's what the ironies of China are very interesting. I was there in 2011 for something else, but I'll tell you, it's just the ironies of them being ahead of us on especially tech. And I won't get into that a lot, but then behind us and some other things. Now, this is quite fascinating here. This is 1,200 acres of hemp that's been harvested and put on a pile by hand. The only thing it wasn't by hand here is they had big tow motors where they put them on these piles. 1,200 acres of hemp. Pretty cool to see. And here they are then. They were actually, that day I was there, they were beginning the process to get the fibers out. And they were putting them in these machines by hand. And that day, it was 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and the temperature was 5 degrees. It was a clear day, no winds. That was good. We were at the latitude of Montreal, Canada, just to give you an idea. But that's where this was taken. A lot of handwork. And you know, we kind of all know this, but for me to see it, it was just interesting to see because ain't many Americans going to do that kind of job. It's just not going to happen. And I'm going to tell you how we're thinking of solving this here at the end. So stick with me. But anyway, you see this technology going through here. This here was 1960s technology. They built this company, this factory in 1960s. They have 1,200 people working there. And you're going to see some more here in the next couple videos. And I'm going to fast forward a little bit and say we visited another more modern one that was doing the exact same thing, but only had 400 people working. More modern, less people needed. I said to my host, well, why don't you just modernize that? I mean, that's the American way, right? Oh, no. Then there would be 800 people without work. We don't think that way. And I'm not saying what's right and wrong. For them, they want to keep those people busy because what are they going to do? I mean, it's just a very real thing. It's just a different way of looking at it. So here's how thread is begun to be made. They take the hemp fibers and they overlap them. And as they proceed there, you'll kind of see the progress here. I'd never seen this before. So it was very fascinating for me to see the beginning stages of how thread is made. And then you'll see we're going to end up with clothing. So now look at this. This is an individual right there of a thread being made and spun. But as I pan back here, it was amazing, the sheer scope and size of this. Look at that. All right. Now guess what? There were 20 of them in this roof, under this roof. 20 of those long machines. You want to know how t-shirts are made? Right here's how t-shirts are made. This is t-shirt material. So they bring hundreds of strings or threads in, and this is the machine here that actually is highly mechanical, but it's very complex, very complicated. Again, fascinating to see how t-shirt material is made. I mean, just look at your t-shirt sometime. It's like thousands of threads, and it has to start somewhere. That's how it's made. So pretty cool to see. This is how, there's terms that I forget now what they are, but when they have the main sheet of a fabric, the first part of it is pulled together again with these hundreds and hundreds of threads. and then it is put on a loom. Now, in this factory here, they told me there's 400 of these looms. Just going out, incredible, just to see that. And then we went over to see where they're putting the fabrics together, actually sewing them. People there sewing them. And it was just, again, to see that. I will say this, not many people get to see what I saw, but it all was predicated on the fact that they want to buy my hemp and have bought my hemp. I'm going to show you pictures of that later on. That's why I got in. And here's some of the products that they make. Oh, that's hemp. It's all hemp. Pretty cool. So we planned about a year ago. The planning was for me to grow hemp. And I'm just going to fast forward here because of the sake of time. This is hemp bales that I baled with my round baler. I'm going to show you how we harvested it here in a sec. But this is going to China. So this is the first week of January. I had the deal made already before I went to China. But when we got back, we filled a container, and there it was. It went to China. Now, it was supposed to be there February 16th. But as of yesterday, they said, it's been postponed until March 10th. So they haven't gotten it yet. So that's my first load of hemp to China. Why China? Well, I'll just tell you right off, I'm not planning on China to be my customer for 10 years from now. We all know there's lots of uncertainties out there. Tariffs, relations, all that. But it was an opportunity I had, and we'll see where that goes. So I want to show you a few other ways that hemp is handled. This is at my farm. This is where it was cut, and then we're putting it together so we can get to bale it. So we're testing some of the existing machinery that we have here, primarily for hay, and seeing how that can work in getting our hemp, processed to whatever the end use is. And also, you're probably familiar. You don't see these round balers as much as you used to. More large square balers around here now. But that's just another option. Here's another thing we did last fall, where we let the hemp go, and then we went right in with a standard corn silage chopper, which you've probably seen them around here. There was no additions, no adoptions to it at all. But we're chopping hemp, and this is the kind of hemp, the kind of way it would look to go into concrete. So that. I have 200 tons of that yet in my farm, so hoping to find a home for that soon. Here's another way, is where we have developed this 4-bar cutter to cut the 15-foot stalks in sections that are essentially 2.5 feet apart. That's something that we made. That's been made here in Lancaster County. And we have a patent on it, and there's some other ones out there. There's some made in Lithuania, and there's one in the U.S. that's pretty good. But also, this is one of a kind. I got the idea of growing long fiber hemp like they do in China, where they hand feed the stalks. Hand feed by hand. And then they separate the fiber from the herd, the inner part. Well, that's not an option here. So we're building, this is our second prototype. Now the third prototype is just beginning to be done, where we hope to have the world's first in-field fiber separator. We'll see where that goes. Another one, I love this picture here, is harvesting green hemp. There's another opportunity for that. And again, this is a straight out corn chopper right out of the cornfields, right in, and relatively no issues. So I just want to have some time for some questions here. I'm sure you might have some. But regeneratively grown hemp is a thing. It's going to happen. We are in the phase of, building it up now, getting that supply chain going, but that's what I am trying to do. And this year is exciting in that regard. If any of you know of some investors that want to put in 20, 30, 50, 100,000, talk to me. That would be helpful. I'll also mention, too, that I have my stuff over there, all the hemp different things you can see. You can see laminated wood, like for a floor here. That hemp is actually harder than oak when it's processed properly. You'll see that over there. You see a lot of variations of the fibers and so forth. I wrote a book. Now, that book's not on hemp. It's basically it's called The Future Proof Farm. It's on regenerative agriculture. It's not specifically how to farm, but if you're interested in getting inside a farmer's mind, that would be a cool read. So if you're interested in that, slip me a $20 bill and I'll let you have one. Questions? Yes, sir. So cotton is a shorter hemp, 2 to 3 inches generally, and it's a certain diameter of the fibers. So hemp starts out much more coarse. So a hemp fiber, if you would get some of the fibers over there, you can keep pulling it apart until it's way smaller than a human hair. And so hemp, if it's taken the first or second step of processing, can be ran through an existing cotton gin. Well, there's not many cotton gins in Lancaster County, in case you don't know that. So we're going to have to either use it for other ways. Now, the question is maybe, what is the pros and cons of hemp versus cotton? Hemp's a little stronger, a little tougher, but hemp takes more processing to get it nice and soft, like we're used to at cotton. So there's a greater expense on that part to get it into textiles for that specific reason. But cotton takes a lot more fertilizers, a lot more pesticides, and in places that are short of water, a lot more water than hemp. So when you look at it objectively, if you're thinking about cotton uses, it doesn't really replace cotton. I'm actually a proponent of blending them. And you kind of have a hybrid. And that seems to be, I think, that's where I'm at least hoping the industry goes. To blend hemp and cotton is a good compromise. So normal hemp would make a great Carhartt jacket. But you can also make linen quality hemp shirts as well. But they're going to be expensive. I'm just going to tell you that. They're going to be expensive because it takes more to get it to that point. Yes?
I have two questions. First one is, why did China buy your hemp if they've been producing it? They haven't stopped producing it.
Yep.
That's the first question. And then the second question is, 2019, you drive through Lancaster County, all of a sudden you've got this smell.
Yep.
Does this type of hemp, does that produce that smell that you?
Let me answer your first question.
Yeah.
Why China? I asked the same question. I was like, no, you're kidding me. That doesn't make sense. Well, the underlying reason is China, as you probably know, the government, do you know that private ownership of land is non-existent in China? There's not one person that owns land. Not one. The government owns every acre of land. You lease it from them. Now, they can put leases up to 99 years. And as long as you're happy with everything, and you can keep it. But China government has seen the need to prioritize food over fiber right now with their population. And so they do it by disincentivizing. They have banned hemp in the best soil because that's saved for food growing. They've kind of pushed it up into the mountains more. Without getting into more details, there was a shortage of hemp. So they were looking to Europe. And when I heard from a European manufacturers, oh yeah, we sent 10 containers to China. I'm like, oh, it must be interesting. I had someone contact us from India. Do you have long fiber hemp? Well, we don't yet, but we're working on it. Why, you ask? Well, we can't get it from China anymore. Like, oh, there must be something to this. So I met this entrepreneur. Well, this guy has been in hemp for 30 years in China. So Chinese guy. I met him at a conference. He came to my farm twice last year in June and September. I met him at another conference in October out in Montana. And what's cool about him, I'll say, is his daughter's going to MIT, right? So he can afford that for her. He wants her to have a good education. He comes to the U.S. at least 4 times a year. He understands our culture. He understands our business practices. And he's been working with a guy I know for 30 years. So you don't just go into another country blind. Believe me, I would have never done the travels I did by myself. No way. But being with him, and so there is a need for fiber in China. This guy provides fiber for the Chinese military. They make a lot of their military uniforms out of hemp. So he's, again, like I said, one of the biggest maybe in the world. He says he's very humble. That's another thing I can appreciate about a guy with a $40 million a year business who's very humble and talks good English. So, yeah. So I got his number in my phone, and we talk when we need to. Your second question, in 2019, what's the smell? Hemp. Well, that was almost all CBD type hemp. And when hemp became legalized, the years before that, the price of CBD was very high. It's very lucrative, if you will. Farmers could theoretically make $20,000, $30,000 an acre, which is like unbelievable. And I think what was unfortunate is there's a lot of CBD could be made out of one plant. And all immediately the market was saturated and it went from euphoria to worst, below the worst possible scenario. I was one of them. And but it got us into the game. And there were a few people who said, don't do that. You got to stay with fiber. That's the future. Well, they were right. So here we are today. But because of, to finalize your question, does this smell like that? Not as strong. It's not bred for that. Could you smell it? Yeah. If you drive by a hemp field and right on your window when it starts budding, you may smell it. But it's not going to be as pungent. I can tell you that. So I mean, I hope that hemp becomes boring, like corn. But the reason it's taken so long is that stigma, it runs deep. And it's a political hot potato. The U.S. government still has not officially taken industrial hemp off the Schedule I drug list, meaning that banks cannot loan money to me unless they just can't. But there are several who are doing it because they know no one's going to shut them down. There are some banks that are out there. There's some here in Lancaster County. Yep, they're there for you. Others say, no, we're not touching that. So that's a hurdle we have. And with the farm bill that's been up for a year and a half now, and of course, who knows when that's going to be settled. The proposals for hemp in there is going to, hopefully we get them. They're going to be very friendly to us. That's going to help. Because again, investors, they don't like any government potential interference or any interference. And, it's causing them to be very careful about it. So, other questions? Yeah, John.
Talk a lot about Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
What's the situation in hemp for hemp in other parts of the United States?
Primarily the northern states are probably farther ahead with it than the southern states. And there's pockets. There's some states that are very friendly. Pennsylvania is one of them. The way the rules are with hemp is, and this is something that it just frustrates me. Well, I'm going to put it in your heart. If you were a farmer and had to grow hemp like I'm talking about, you would have to get an FBI criminal background check. You would have to get all 10 of your fingers fingerprinted. And you would have to pay for a permit. It's only $150, but to grow the stuff. And then the state needs to come out and they need to test your hemp before you harvest it to make sure it's not marijuana. It's just ridiculous. And I know of some farmers, some of my friends here in Lancaster County said, if I have to get an FBI background check, I'm out. I'm not doing it. And I get that. So that's some of the hurdles we have, now to go. So Pennsylvania has been friendly. They've been realistic. Not all states have been. Montana's been good. South and North Dakota has been good. Trying to think. Some of my friends. North Carolina's been really good. Texas, good. California, not good. In spite of the fact that recreational marijuana is everywhere. I mean, I was in Los Angeles on my way. The guy I know that I referenced earlier, the American guy, he's the largest importer of hemp fabric in the United States. He's been in for 30 years. You could import hemp, but you couldn't grow it until 2019. But he took me around LA. We had 12 hours before our flight to China. And we went by an inside grow in Los Angeles that you could open the window and you could smell it coming in your car window. So they're all about recreational. But us farmers trying to grow this, don't get me started. But it's California. Right here.
Well, our cottage at Masonic Village is very hemp friendly.
Yeah.
And we want more of it.
Good for you.
Eat hemp protein.
Yes.
My shakes every morning, hemp protein powder. And my wife loves hemp hearts.
Yes.
Put it in everything.
Yep.
And we sprinkle it on things. We want toilet paper. We want copy paper out of hemp. And then we'll be happy.
I have seen hemp toilet paper. It's out there. It's going to be a little more expensive yet, but I think as John was saying, when are we going to get hemp paper? I'm going to say it's coming. We got to get some of these hurdles out of the way. And probably most of you don't know, but hemp seeds, I didn't talk about grain or seeds. I didn't talk about that today. That's going to be a thing here in Lancaster County eventually, because hemp seeds have the perfect balance of the omega-3 and omega-6s for human consumption. It's the best.
That's
It is. And we do what you do. We have a shaker. We shake it on almost everything. It's like a supplement, and it's really good for you. And hemp hearts, if you've never heard of it, next time you go to a natural food store and find hemp hearts, that's actually the hemp seed with the shell taken off, and you can just eat them with a spoon. I mean, it's good, right?
Yeah.
It's good. And to sprinkle that in salads, it's a way you can get good protein into your body for your health. This is why and I'm going to harken back to why hemp was banned. See, if you think about the 20s and the 30s, that's when big business was just starting to develop. Well, Big Pharma at that time, which wasn't called Big Pharma, they were worried that this crop could potentially eat into medicinal stuff, uses. Because you can't patent the seed. You can patent the growing of it, but 2 years later, you can patent a pill, but you can't patent a plant like that. And also the oil and all the fiber, the cotton industry was against it. They used marijuana to ban it. I used to thought that was a conspiracy. It's not. And the media at the time, fake news didn't just start 10 years ago. The media at the time had all these forests that they owned to make paper and everything. Because that's how the media was all about paper. It was the newspaper. That was the media. And so this plant, they were threatened by it because you can grow 4 times as much paper as you get per acre every year with hemp than you can of woods.
Save the forest.
Exactly. But, oh no. Anyway. Yeah, you're in the green.
How much of your business is export versus imports as far as going out? And with the possible tariffs, how does that impact your business?
It was a big discussion we had in September before the election because we knew this could happen. It was a big discussion in December after the election when I was over there about the tariffs and the business. And it was interesting coming from the Chinese guy. His comment was, and it's in the news today now. I mean, I think Trump was going to be speaking here by now today. And his comment, I thought it was interesting coming from a Chinese. He said, China needs U.S., U.S. needs China. His thought at the time was they're going to work something out. Now, I know there's a lot of threats going back and forth now. We'll see where that shakes out. None of us in this room can control that. And so you asked the question, what percent? See, I only sent 1 container. I would have 20 containers if I'd sell it all. And actually, we have a sample bale of chopped hemp that we went in that container. If they like that, my chopped hemp might go to China. But actually, I want to keep it here now because I want to go with the concrete probably. And that's where it have a fit. So, to answer your question, very little is exported. Now, I'm also have, I think, a better deals with the Italians. We're talking to some Italians right now that want our long fiber that my machine is going to make. And they're like, why would you want to work with the Chinese? And I'm like, well, fair point. But, any country is a risk or benefit. So we'll see. Because they're offering now, it's kind of cool. Is we're going to pay you more. I'm like, all right. But their specs are a little higher too. So we'll have to figure this all out. So what I have right now is it's too early to tell. And with world dynamics and everything, with this being a new industry, I haven't even found my way totally yet because I don't know what it is. I'm just involved building the equipment that needs to get this industry off the ground. I have a call on Monday with some global people that we were on a call the other week. They said they wanted to talk with me individually. I'm not sure what that call is about, but I'm just trying now to find our way to establish that hemp will be used by every one of you eventually. We want to build a building there on our farm we're going to call it the Hemp Innovation Center. We want to use hemp concrete. We want to put hemp in insulation. That's called hempcrete. They should have named it that way. It's not concrete. Hempcrete is just insulation with lime. They'll put it in the walls. Like you see those bricks back there. I'm assuming they're real bricks. They're probably outside at one point. But those fake bricks you can put in your house, we can make them out of that concrete, and they're much lighter. I just saw them last week. It was pretty cool to see all the decorative uses that you can put hemp into. So I asked at the very beginning, is hemp in your future? I hope it is, because there's so many uses for it, and I didn't have time to explain them all today. But I wanted to at least give you a little bit of a foretaste of what happens, and now you'll know a little bit more when you see some of this stuff coming down the pipe. So how many in time, John?
You're good on time. So
Well, I'll keep going. I'll keep answering questions. What other questions you have?
How's it feel being a pioneer?
So, how does it feel to be a pioneer? You know, my first thought that flashes through my head, there's a saying that pioneers have arrows in their back. I feel that way sometimes. And at other times, you know, you're kind of in the pinnacle of people asking your autograph after you're done making speeches like this. I'm not asking you guys to get my autograph, just saying it happens. You know, it's what I was, this is the way I am. I did not start out my life thinking that I would be an educator. I told my mom in 6th grade, John, that I didn't want to go to high school. I didn't think there was a need for it. I was going to be a farmer. She said, you write that down. So I wrote it down. Well, I went to high school. Glad I did. Had a good time. But I didn't go to college. When people ask, where did you graduate from? I'm like, I never graduated. I'm still in college because I'm still learning. So to answer that question, it's who I am. I've developed a lot of things over the years now. I'm 61. And I look back, you know, I never thought I would be doing this kind of thing, even talking to up front. That was not what I did. I was just going to be a farmer. I loved that. And, you know, when I was a senior in high school, I took just the bare minimum classes I could. And I made it a point to always maximize my study halls because I hated homework. Because when I get home, I wanted to be out on the farm. And so, you know, that's kind of led me here today. Yeah.
You got a message.
Yeah.
You got a voice.
Thank you.
You got a mission.
Mm-hmm.
But education, how it's framed, you know, all this stuff about we got to ban hemp because we're going to put the newspaper business out of business. We're going to make farmers against it, and all that stuff that's made up. You need it framed. What's the megaphone to make this digestible for people that need to hear it?
Yep.
So it catches.
So the way I've looked at that is I do have a platform where people know who I am. I used to be more into soil health, regenerative agriculture, but I've intentionally pivoted now. I'm actually not taking a lot of speaking engagements that are on that sector because there's plenty of people that can do that now. That whole, I don't even want to call it a trend, that whole movement is up and running. That's going. Hemp is not yet. And so I pivoted to hemp, and that's why I was glad that you asked me to talk. I probably wouldn't have came, John, if I would have talked to someone else. So part of the microphone is today, talking to you. But also I get on TV. I've been on national TV. I've been on documentaries. There'll be a film coming out about hemp here probably in a year and a half that I'll be in. So I take advantage of whatever I can. Right now, though, I've kind of pulled back a little because, as you can see, I don't have definitive things to talk about. And I'm very focused on what I'm doing at home and inventing and working with my son and another engineer right out of Penn State that is doing very well for us. So I'm really focusing on the home front. I envision that in a year from now, I'll be back into the more educational mode and taking those opportunities.
See, my point is, you don't have to do that. You can do your invention and your stuff at home, but who's the voice? I mean, you need another voice. You need somebody to be the microphone, the megaphone.
Well,
you can, you know.
Yeah, I can only do so much. I think that's what you're saying, and I totally agree. I mean, there's some national organizations out there. I do have, connections to other people who are doing the same thing I'm doing, in being that megaphone, the educational piece. Hopefully, some of those barriers that I referenced will be taken down or eliminated so that we have to make stuff. I mean, if I come in here and I just tell you, well, I heard about putting hemp in concrete, well, go over there and look at it. That's here. But I can't tell you that the local concrete manufacturer's using it yet. See, we're not there yet. Once that occurs, that Channel 8 will be all over that. And I intend to have them on my farm to cover that. I did have the governor at my farm last summer, Josh Shapiro, and, he's a supporter. So the Secretary of Ag, they're very strong supporters. I don't know what the politics are in the room. I didn't vote for the governor, but I got to give him credit. He's helping farmers pretty good. So in a kind of like, I feel my role is when I can agree with a politician, regardless of what their label on, I'm going to support it. And, so that's just some of the areas where I try to take advantage of everything I can. But right now, I'm not as out there as I was in the last 20 years, I'll just say. But I intend that to change once we have something to really show for. What I don't like is when I see people have a great idea and it's just an idea. And they say, claim all this stuff, and it might sound good to me, have a good voice and delivery and everything. But I'm going to wait till I actually have some. Back here.
Not a question. This is just off topic, but what's your hat made out of?
What's what?
Your hat.
Oh, this hat was purchased in Australia. It was my souvenir when I've been to Australia a couple times. And it is made out of sheep wool.
Sheep wool.
Yeah. And kangaroo leather.
Okay.
I thought that was pretty cool. So I've been wearing this since 2016. It's kind of become my little symbol. I have it as my brand, and that's why I wear it today.
I'll try to get some hemp fiber and broke out.
Yeah, I actually, there's a hemp beanie over there and a hemp, what do you call it, a scarf. But yeah, I should get a hemp. I'm trying to start to collect now some hemp clothing. I don't have any on today, but I gotta walk the talk. Anyway.
Thank you very much. It was very,
Oh,
educational.
well, you're welcome. You're welcome. You good? Thank you.